It's a very interesting means of transportation, this, Peter.
It's all I got. Strong man, thanks.
Welcome back. You're with Terry Erasmus, and today my special guest is Peter Hattingh, and I'm honored to have him at my house. Thank you, Leon, for making this happen. Peter Hattingh to South African bonsai growers is a name I'm sure many of you will have heard of before. And maybe today you'll learn a little bit about the person that is Peter Hattingh. Peter, welcome.
Thank you.
Relax and we just chat about bonsai, which is clearly something that you're passionate about. How long have you been doing bonsai for?
Let's see. I think pretty safe to say 1962.
Where did you first encounter bonsai, or how did you get involved with it?
I started work for the Durban Council in the Botanical Garden, and I found ancient nursery stock that had never been planted out, and they were pretty well sitting ducks. So I started messing around a bit. I'd only seen odd photographs in magazines what they were about. I hadn't ever seen a real
gardening magazines or something.
Yeah,
not the Sunset Book of Bonsai or something like that, wasn't it? That was the
some ladies magazine.
Okay.
Anyway, I started messing around very vaguely, and then I heard of a doctor in Durban that was growing bonsai. Someone saw that I was trying, and then they said, "You must go and see Dr. So-and-so." And I went to him, and he was at the very early stages of that kind of ancient idea that you grew them in orange skins.
No, I've never.
You plant the seed in there, and when the roots penetrate through the orange, you clip them off. So
I've never heard that.
Have you heard that?
No.
that was how much we knew.
Okay.
He said he'd heard the story.
Okay.
And he was trying it.
Okay.
The result was all these trees were maximum of about 4 or 5 inches tall.
Yeah?
And they were just straight sticks. Now, I'd already found some stuff with bark on and so on.
Yes.
But it kind of languished there with the bonsai. I never met another grower. There were only 2 of us in Durban, as far as I know. And it was a big city.
So obviously no clubs, no news, nothing. Yeah.
No literature, no exposure. So I luckily got a opportunity to go to the States as part of my training, and at the garden I worked at Longwood. They had a serious collection of imported Japanese trees, and they were struggling a bit with them. And I managed to help a little bit. They had a guy, but he was just an ordinary gardener. Anyway, that went quite well, and then I travelled through to Washington, D.C., their National Arboretum collection of bonsai, and then I saw the real stuff, and in New York City. And then after a year at Longwood in Pennsylvania, I travelled across the States to the West Coast, drove through, and then got on hiking, kind of, in a way, on ships, and got to Hawaii. Saw a couple there, but not much. The tropical stuff didn't really interest me. And then next stop was Tokyo. And I started, and then I saw that as a serious business with a, what do you call that village? Omiya.
Omiya, yeah.
Omiya. So I spent a couple of days looking at this lot and getting quite excited about it. And that's when I first noticed or realized that the Japanese commercial guys were growing nearly everything in the ground. This amazed me. They were pruning them and root pruning them in the ground and then potting them on gradually for sale. But tens of thousands of trees. It was like a major industry. It's a whole village virtually committed.
Well, it's very different now, of course, than it was then.
I haven't been back.
No, there's only, if I remember correctly, there's about 5 nurseries left in Omiya. and the rest is all, it's a very built-up neighborhood, yeah.
I imagine at that time it was like the world center of bonsais, of commercial.
Well, they did a very good job of promoting themselves as the bonsai village, yes.
Okay. So from there to Hong Kong, saw a couple more. A little bit disappointed in the Chinese, having learned by then that they actually were the pioneers of bonsai. And then a year or two back in Durban, and I moved to Cape Town. I moved to Kirstenbosch, and suddenly I found some serious growers. It was Becky Lucas.
So you've met Betty, because I've worked on some of her trees, the pines.
I was evicted from her club.
Is it?
Being some kind of a
renegade. Renegade.
I don't know what it was.
Okay. Was she a strict old lady?
Myself and Bernard.
Yeah.
And a guy called Bob Richards.
Yes, Bob Richards. Yes.
And there was an American called Phil. He was a kind of an amateur guy. He wasn't serious about it. He was more a club man. But the four of us got virtually thrown out of the club. Being, I don't know why. I really don't know why. But she was strict. She was a kind of OCD, you know. She wanted to control everything.
Now she'd also, my understanding was that she had been to Japan at some stage as well, and that's her.
I think so.
Okay.
But very enthusiastic, but no kind of imagination at all.
Okay.
And if you didn't like her rules and her ideas, you were out of there. And I think that's why we got thrown out. Because Bernard was a avant-garde type guy. Bernard was an innovator.
Yes.
So we had a little meeting, the four of us, and it was in my little house, which is at the entrance to Kirstenbosch. And we had this club. And one of my regrets, that Cape Bonsai Kai became probably the leading club in the country. But at the initial meeting, which I chaired, but I didn't know really what I was doing, I wanted to suggest it should have been called the Good Hope Bonsai Kai.
Okay.
And I regretted that all my life.
Yeah.
And Brother Mark, he designed the logo.
Oh, really?
That acacia tree, it's acacia.
Yes.
It's still going on, eh?
Yes, they haven't changed it.
It was part of that.
Oh, wow, okay.
Deal, but I think he did it a couple of years later, or a couple of months later.
Yeah.
Anyway, that very same year, we had the first show at Kirstenbosch, because each of us had something to show, and we started attracting guys from the other club. And I think...
What other club? Was it Oyama?
Oyama didn't exist.
Not yet, okay.
There was, they called it the Bonsai Society.
Ah, yes, of course. They still exist, yeah.
That was Becky Lucas, and she was the Bonsai Society.
Okay,
no one could She was like the lifetime chairman woman.
Okay.
And anyway, so we organized this show, and the people got a big surprise, because Bonsai Society had never done one. And suddenly we got the whole of Kirstenbosch lecture room there, and full of stuff. We built a central centerpiece, Mount Fuji, with a whole mountain, and it stood about 2 meters high, and odd pine trees around it, and snow on the top, and all sorts of. So from there on, the club grew like a bomb, and within 2 or 3 years, there must have been 50 or 60 members. We were already bigger than the original club. Yes. And then I left. Okay. I went off to...
You moved?
Namibia.
Okay, you moved.
I got work in Walfish Bay. And unfortunately, I took my collection, most of it. By then I probably had 50 or 60 trees and some quite promising stuff. Because I had access to Kirstenbosch nursery. I was working in the nursery.
Oh, okay.
They didn't know what they had. And
yes.
So, including those notorious Galpinias. But guys like Bernard and... No, Rudy wasn't around by then. But they got the best stuff.
Yeah.
There was a bunch of acacias, robusta. Magic stuff. I didn't spot them. But Bernard collected the whole bloody lot. So
I wonder where those trees are now, if they're still alive.
They're around. I even recognize them.
Is it?
Rudy ended up with 1 or 2.
Okay.
Anyway, so from I left for Namibia. I took all my trees with me in crates and on by train. And I remember stopping it took 3 or 4 days. I used to go and water them in the carriage that carried the
you had all your trees on the train.
Train with me. Took them to Walfish Bay. I was given a
Didn't
house.
you get some strange looks?
No, well, they were kind of sealed.
Oh, were they? Okay.
I just had a bucket of water.
Okay.
But the sad thing happened. The first weekend we had a chance, we went to look at the Skeleton Coast. Got back to Walfish Bay the Sunday night. The Monday morning I went and looked at the trees and they were totally buried under drift sand, wind-blown salt sand.
Yeah.
And it killed them all. Just overnight. A whole lot of them gone. If I'd known then what I know now, I might have washed them down and bare-rooted them, but lost them all. And that included some trees that I'd left in Cape Town that with people. Now, kind of strange things happened with that. But anyway, managed to salvage a couple. I've still got one, and that's at Galpinia. It's the only tree from that original collection. So that was my early days. But what happened in Cape Town was meeting all the enthusiasts that were already getting organized. It made all the difference. Then I realized this is a really worthwhile thing.
So I suppose at that stage, when bonsai was first really in its infancy in South Africa, people must have been very excited and very innovative, and or people trying all because you didn't really know what you were doing. You were trying everything.
Most people, I seem to remember, didn't actually know what it was.
Oh, okay. They didn't understand. Okay.
What are you doing here? This is.
But then, how did you feel having been to Japan and seeing Omiya? Although in the 60s, I mean, the trees were nothing like they look now. They were very much more naturalistic. If you look at the old Kokofu albums, which is the old the headline or the main bonsai exhibition in Japan, they have the earlier albums, which date, I don't know what the first ones are, but it's roughly that period of time, and they. But having seen that, and then seeing how did that influence your approach to bonsai? And then trying to convey that, or were you doing a lot of the lectures, or were you talking or sharing a lot? Or not really?
But what we did do, which was a major thing, before I left, John Narker came out. And about that time, Rudy joined the club. Well, after, I think I left about 4 or 5 years after the club was initiated, and Rudy joined about 2 years later, and he was a real live wire. He's a natural. He really took things to a different level. But having said that, I think Bernard actually was the main man. Bernard could design a tree that was unbelievable. You see something that looks like a bunch of nonsense, and he would come out with something.
Yeah.
But Bernard's problem, which Rudy didn't have, actually, interesting story about Rudy. He was growing his trees on the roof.
Bernard?
No, Rudy.
Rudy. Oh, okay.
And he lived in a kind of a flat, and you had to climb out through a window onto a balcony and then onto the roof, and the trees were on the slope of the roof, little racks and things.
Yeah.
But he was totally devoted. He's probably the first guy that became, I'd imagine, virtually in the whole country, a professional bonsai grower.
Yes. Fully committed.
He was total.
Yeah.
And when I met him, he was a chef.
Yes, that's right. A baker. Yes, he was a baker. Yeah.
But a real arrogant little Austrian. He was like Hitler. And so he thought he knew everything, and he knew a hell of a lot more than the rest of us. But so Rudy was probably the spark that really got things going. But Bernard went through all the years that I knew him. Died young, unfortunately. But you mentioned Omiya. That was one of Bernard's clubs. And as far as I can remember, he started at least 3.
Oh, you mean Oyama?
Oyama. So Bernard went around. That was what his forte was, starting new clubs. And then when he was bored with that, he'd go
move on.
And he moved around a lot. And he had another very unfortunate thing. He was always struggling a little bit financially. So as soon as he had a decent tree, he would sell it.
Oh, he'd sell it.
He'd sell it. And he went to his place and
he had nothing
to show. But when he decided he needs some money, he could create quickly. And he had a little market thing going in Pinelands, some farmers market type thing. They used to go there on the weekends, and his wife used to sell the trees. He would be growing. So Bernard was a very interesting character.
Yes.
Totally, what do you call those kind of people? A renegade. He would
that's what I heard as well. He was barefoot, a bit of a rebel.
Rebel, that's the word. And he had
a maverick.
He had a funny little hat, like a child's hat, beach hat. He would wear this no matter where he went. Into conventions where everyone's dressed up. Bernard would rock up there in his shorts, barefoot, with his little funny hat on. And but he was a character. I really liked him, but we never knew what was going to come out of him.
He was unpredictable.
Totally. But luckily, I think we had those kind of characters. And Bob Richards was the opposite. He was a very proper guy. Everything was done by the book. The designing, everything was perfect. And records kept of meetings and stuff. Another thing we did, I think we were the early stages, we produced a magazine, monthly, and it's probably still going on. I don't know.
No, it's not. Well, I don't believe it is, but I remember seeing those magazines. I can't remember the name of it though. But yes, I do remember.
It said Bonsai Kai.
But Bonsai Kai. Yes, it was issued by the Cape Bonsai Kai. The Cape Bonsai Kai was doing it.
And I had a complete collection for the first 10 years of those, and I gave them to a boy in Baviaans Kloof, who was very keen. But he didn't look after them. I know they're pretty well tattered now, so there would have been a quite interesting bit of history there. And each person was expected to submit something every month, what they were doing, and photographs. And
that was, yes, I remember, because in fact I created the Cape Bonsai Kai website. And I don't know if it exists anymore, but I did create a website for them, and to populate it with content, I scanned most of those articles from those magazines and converted it to text and then uploaded it to the website. So those articles were, and it's amazing how
probably caused the demise of the magazine in a way.
Well, the magazine had stopped long before that. They didn't. I don't think my efforts only resulted in that content actually being delivered to people that were previously unable to get that content.
But I think one of the big motivators and breakthroughs was, I don't know who did it and how it came about, it was when John Knocker was invited. And I think possibly the biggest single influence in the entire country was John Knocker.
Where does a person like Charles Soronio, where did he...
parallel development of the bonsai thing took place in Johannesburg, Pretoria area. I didn't realize that until I went up to a convention there, that they were pretty advanced bunch. In fact, I think after Rudy, they had the best growers in the country somehow. But John Knocker had been there.
Charles Soronio's book, Bonsai Styles of the World, is still it's the only book of its kind that I'm aware of that delves into all the styles of bonsai, and it's a fantastic reference book, and I think it's very highly respected or highly regarded internationally. I mean, the book is exported.
He popularized the South African,
the African style too. The African styles. Yes.
The acacias and the baobab.
Yes. Here's an interesting question for you, Peter. So there's a lot of everybody, I think most countries around the world are looking for an identity when it comes to bonsai. So that's Japanese bonsai, that's Chinese bonsai. I think these characteristics are becoming a little bit less obvious. So they being hazy, gray areas. But I think South Africa also is asking that question of what is South African bonsai? What makes South African bonsai unique? And so I would ask the question, like, why is it important? Is it important that we have something that distinguishes South African bonsai? And then secondly, how much do you think, what is the measure of influence that we are South African, and if working with particularly South African species, indigenous species, but just generally, if we are South African, doesn't it, unless we're trying to do paint by numbers or copy something, although every tree is unique. Any tree that you sit down and work on is unique, so you're never going to be able to copy something. Well, I suppose never is, but how important do you think that what is your, do you have any views? Have you thought of it? Yeah, sorry.
I would say the South African style, the styles which are obvious, are inevitable. They are what they are, which
because we see them.
No one else has got them.
Yeah,
they haven't got the flat-crowned acacias. They haven't got the baobabs.
Yeah.
So what has evolved was given to us. It's like finding a special tree. It's got a natural splendor which is almost impossible to create. And I think we got bonsai that are definitely South African. And I don't think they denote any kind of national traits, but they are probably, I think, because they are here and we've adapted to them. That was a big problem initially. I think bonsai people thought you've got to grow a pine or a maple. But when you start finding really good stuff like the olive, that's a treasure. I've got an idea about another tree which I think will become very important in the future. I've tried it and I've struggled, but there are magic specimens out in the Karoo, and that's the guarri, Euclea undulata. The shape in the wild and the natural way it grows and the tiny leaves, everything is perfect, but it's not an easy tree to grow. And I don't know of anybody who's tried it other than Leon's father. He dug one.
I've seen that tree, and Leon's got it now.
Leon's got it. It's quite a
it's in a big container.
But that sort of material is still out there, and it hasn't been really worked on yet. It's obvious, like figs, sitting ducks, you find them natural. And acacias, of course, are. Yes. But they're very, very difficult to lift in the wild. They can be grown quite well from nursery stock.
The other one that comes to my mind that has a lot of potential is the Diospyros or Diosporus, whichever you. So the ones that you generally see is the Whittiana, but there are many others that are actually
probably the best one of all. Yeah, they got a great potential.
Also small leaf. I mean, it's easy to confuse them with myrtles.
Yeah, true.
The smaller leaf varieties, but they don't. So I've grown some of them from seed. They're slow to develop, but even when you find them in the forest or in growing wild, they don't bark up. They've got a very smooth bark, so okay, maybe that's not their attractive feature. But they also you won't find, I've never seen one that has a lot of movement to it. It's generally very strong, taperless sort of trunks. So I think you'd have to, if you're wanting something that has a bit of character, you'd probably have to grow it yourself, but be prepared to wait a while.
Another underrated thing I think will be in the future is the Gruyere.
Yes.
Grace Bessie.
Yes.
Because it flowers freely as a small plant, which a lot of trees don't do that. It's an unusual. You don't see flowers on a bonsai acacia hardly ever.
What do you see now in South African bonsai that is encouraging, or what do you see are the biggest improvements, or? I mean, it's a big question, but just something anything that comes to mind.
Lost touch with stuff being in an isolated environments, like in the Eastern Cape, in the Balvians Kloof, and then back in Knysna. So I don't really know what's going on in the big cities and where the shakers and movers are, like yourself. So I can't really answer that. But what I can see, obviously, is that nearly everybody knows what a bonsai is nowadays. As in the early days, they didn't even know what was going on. The fact that it's so widespread, it will only go ahead. And every now and then, a real champ pops up, and there'll be more and more. And the interest in the indigenous stuff seems to be really on the increase.
Yes. So I think I'm very excited about the future of bonsai in South Africa. I really am. There's a lot of individuals that are doing really great stuff.
Club angle seems to be diminishing, but unfortunately, one of the most important things about groups of people is the interaction and the way they inspire each other. I found after I left Cape Town, I ended up in small dorpies all over the place, and there was nothing going on. And one tends to lose the enthusiasm. Yes. It's only when you get back in where there's a crowd of guys doing stuff, amazing stuff, like your thing with importing trees. That was totally unknown. Now we're getting serious quality instantly, and which we never had. But the club angle is definitely...
I think that certainly you don't want to get into a discussion or debate about clubs, but I think they play a very important role in the future, certainly for beginners. And I always refer people to find either a grower near to where you are, find out if there's somebody, because Facebook, you can connect to people easily that way, or join a club. But I think, the other angle to consider as well is that I've got these beautiful trees, as do many others. How do you share that? Because I feel one of the things that I feel about bonsai is that when you've created this thing of beauty, you want to share it. Now, this is not an ego trip. It's about sharing something that's beautiful, that's being created. So that other people can also appreciate that.
Needs a bit of recognition in a way, or
I suppose, look, I think, of course, a person would be lying to you, and myself included, if I said it's not nice to have a compliment. We all like to be complimented. Exhibitions are also very important for not only for the members or the people that are exhibiting the trees, but also for the public. Right. If the public can gain access to it.
That first show I was telling you about at Kirstenbosch, within a month, we doubled our membership. Everyone who saw them and saw what the potential was and that it's possible, they streamed in. Most of them drop away, but
when they realize the commitment.
I think even Rudy was one of those.
Is it?
Yeah. He came to the people in Kirstenbosch, he had some vague idea. Yeah. But once he's met that group, he was... Within a year or so, he was the chairman, and for every year after that for 20 years.
South Africa is a big place, and we have a very diverse variety or flora.
Maybe the greatest in the world.
Yes, I mean, I think Japan is possibly, they could even, I wouldn't be surprised if they were envious of the species that we have available to bonsai, and it's relatively untouched. I mean, there are some people that are, there's some work being done on, like you mentioned Colinema earlier on, and I know the Grevia. I know a few people that are working with them. I myself am very excited about the Galpini transvalicas. I think they're fantastic trees. I mean, they reliably give you good color, autumn color, which you can't say the same with Trident maples necessarily. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. They bark up very nicely. But very few people are growing them, to my knowledge.
You talk about the varieties available. I'm not sure, but I imagine Japanese bonsai, you could count them under 100 to the species. We've got thousands. It's like mind-boggling, and most of them haven't. A lot of them haven't actually been discovered yet.
Peter, one of the things that I've tried to do with my YouTube channel is featuring artists that are doing something. to give them, not so much to give them recognition, but I've been very fortunate with the amount of subscribers that we have, the viewers that do watch the channel, that it might help because as I said, a lot of these people they're not club members anymore. The information, the content that they have developed over years, they're doing their own thing, in their own backyard, and they're doing good stuff, but nobody knows about it.
Yeah.
And I think that's unfortunate. If somebody can give you a head start, with that basic foundation of knowledge, with just short track
Talking about species, there's some things that surprise me, like the Colunder yellowwood doesn't seem to be...
The which one?
The
the yellow Falcatus, yeah.
They don't seem to... Nobody's growing them, and I think it's a tremendous subject. It's up there with that Podocarpus that the Japanese grow. What is that little one?
No, the Taiwanese, the Taiwanese do a lot of Podocarpus
anyway,
work.
somewhere in the east they grow Podocarpus.
Yeah, it's a Taiwanese.
Not as good as ours, as far as I can see. Bigger leaf.
No, well, the one that I know is I forget now. I think it's called the common. I think one of the names is Buddha pine.
Buddha pine. That's it.
But it's a Podocarpus, but it's got a much shorter needle than the Falcatus. It's a genetic, it's like a mutation, and it gets grafted onto,
It's a sport.
But it's one individual, Andre, I don't know what his last name is, but he runs Pygmy Bonsai out in George.
Yeah, I know.
I know he has grown a number of Podocarpus, big stumps, but when you trunk chop them, I don't think that the scar heals very
and
quickly.
It's not the tree you're likely to find in the wild.
No,
because it's a forest tree.
Yes, exactly. So you're not going to be able to find something that, well, I don't know, maybe you can, but
it's got a
something stunted.
tremendous range. It grows all the way from the peninsula through Zululand.
There's a species of hibiscus tilia something. Yeah. Now it's a Natal plant, and in Taiwan they grow them extensively, and they form the most insanely highly ramified trees. But I think Gail Teron, and I don't know who else has actually grown those trees.
I haven't seen it as bonsai. I only think there's only the one.
The leaves become extremely small with in cultivation in a container. Yeah. Peter, thanks so much for coming to visit. I really appreciate it, and I hope this is it won't be the last time. I'm sure we'll see each other again soon in the future, and I'm sure that we only just scratched the surface with the stories and history of bonsai. I'm sure there's a lot more that you could tell, and but thank you for taking the time to share that information with us, because I'm always I love to speak to people from the earlier. It's just very interesting to see the roots, the origins, where things come from. It's been a privilege to have Peter with us today, and it's really fun, and I enjoyed listening to some of the roots and some of the history of bonsai in South Africa. And Peter was just telling me a moment ago that he's you're the only living founder member of the CBK.
Well, I was already 3 years ago.
So I hope you've enjoyed this discussion, interaction, and I'd certainly love to have Peter back, and maybe next time he'll let us visit his place and take a look at some of his trees. I'd like to. Sounds like there's a lot of sentimentality, stories certainly that goes along with some of them. But thanks very much for watching, and I hope you've enjoyed it. And if you haven't done so yet, please do subscribe, and then you'll be notified when we upload new content. But thanks again, and until next time, take care. Bye-bye.
Adios.
But I think you've created very nice different levels, which is great.